this is Konganaya outside of Demico, the western pavement of Demico, and they are of course performing some cultural shoots Saturday morning.
That's all the money that me walk for. A 2 pound note and a guild up this. A 2 pound note and a guild up this. A 2 pound note and a guild up this. This is all the money that me walk for. I said money, neighbor, money, neighbor, money, money, neighbor, money, money. Now I don't want you conniving money. Oh, Joseph, for me.
Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountain, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep.
serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Together, my comrades, we will build a brand new Guyana, a country where all are equal opportunity. So let us begin now to show loyalty to Guyana by showing love and respect for all Guyanese. My brothers, my sisters, we will live and die here together. On to one people, one nation, one destiny. For harmonious living, cooperation will be forever. In work and play as we live as proud Guyanese. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Well, it's time we said all the rich lands in the interior. Our natural resources are there in great quantity. And we will do farming and establish jobs by the border. We'll grow more food so we would fill all Guyanese. My greatest desire is to serve my country, Guyana, and sincerely help my Guyana to move along. Our government asks us that we study hard and we learn the things that will help Guyana to become strong. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. To help develop Guyana the free.
Morning, neighbor, morning. Morning, all your morning. Let's cooperate with each other to develop Guyana the free. Mudwater, wherever you are, morning to you. Mudwater, wherever you're there, morning. I hear them boys lock up Mudwater and a whole set of people associated with Mudwater or the Mudwater Guyana Uncut publication. Many are saying, well, it's censorship. Others are saying it's enforcement of the law, the rule of law. Many are saying that Mudwater serves a purpose in the society because behind that cartoon character, a lot has been revealed. Let me say people generally hide behind cartoon characters such as Mudwater and Peeping Tom when they do not feel safe enough to discuss in a public way matters of national interest. Let's keep that in mind. And so while many are looking at the arrest of Mudwater based on allegations of cyberbullying, I like to look at things from an alternate perspective. And in this instance, I want us to look at things from the fact that people have to hide behind the cartoon characters and pseudonyms and pen names and so on to discuss national issues And that says that we are not in a country as democratic as we purport. Guyana is not as democratic as we argue, or as some sections of people argue. Guyana is not as democratic, it is not as free. People do not have the freedom of expression. Take a trip over to Trinidad, Barbados if you wish, and you will see the citizens there ridicule their government using all kinds of languages. Right? Calls them the most jackasses, etc. But nobody goes after those citizens because freedom of speech is recognized and respected. Good? Cyberbullying, a new terminology in Guyana. We've always had bullying. Schoolyard bullies. Name calling is a thing of Guyana. Just the other day, a friend, a viewer, called me and said, "Hey, Kiraki, X person is dead." I said, "Who is the guy?" "I don't know the person." And I was giving description of where the person lived and so on, and who they collected to and so on. Okay? The reality is, when the false names came into play, I said, "Oh, it's them people now." Why they can't blame the APNU for that stupid law? Well, we're going to talk about that. If they're blamable or not. Some people are pig-headed, so when you advise them, they don't listen. They live to see the aftermath of some of their pig-headedness. Anyway, I am saying that when those false names came into place, well, I recognized who was the deceased. So if you call that bullying, we've been bullied a whole lot growing up. And we're stronger for it, quite frankly. I guess a lot of people are still psychologically unstable. We have a lot of depressed people walking around in this society because of false names and bullying. But I think we have more depressed people walking around in this society because of government's policies and discrimination. Hundreds of people being dismissed from their jobs. You don't think that has had a psychological effect on them? Thousands of persons currently employed in the public sector, walking on thin ice every day. Anxious every single day because they're wondering, when am I going to be dismissed because I'm black? When I'm going to be dismissed because the new hire doesn't like me and doesn't look like me? Or even if he or she looks like me, doesn't like me because of my political affiliation and they are affiliated to and have been given employment by the PPP. Hundreds, thousands of Guyanese employed in the public service are walking around anxious every single day. Anxious and depressed. Okay? Anxious and depressed. What you kind of say, use fake names. When you have to resort to using fake names to discuss national issues, you know you don't live in a democracy. That is Korea and China and Russia, those places. But that is where we have to go to. Right? Sad state of affairs. I am not saying that I like the style of Mudwater. I'm not saying that I stand by whatever he puts out, everything that he puts out and so on. As a matter of fact, I perhaps am one of the least to be considered a fan of Mudwater. I never knew who Mudwater is. Up to now, I don't know who Mudwater is because I generally don't follow Mudwater. At one time, I thought it was Will Johnson, right? In the early days of Mudwater. But I don't know. But my whole thing is, creatives, artists have so much freedom. We call it poetic freedom. And in any society you go, a lot of the issues which can be touched or which are not touched by ordinary citizens are usually addressed by creatives. And in those very societies, creatives are not usually targeted because they have that poetic license. Okay? Right? And so the whole issue is, why are we going after Mudwater? And look at the speed, the alacrity with which they have gone after Mudwater, was able to find who Mudwater is, allegedly, according to them, confiscate equipment belonging to Mudwater, and have been able to arrest a whole long list of people in relation to Mudwater. Why? Simply because you talk about somebody being a homosexual, an undercover gay. Well, a lot of us have had our suspicions long ago. A lot of us have had our suspicions. Good. But you see, while a lot of people look at the Mudwater issue and case as police action and so on, I see it as showing what connections can do for you in this country. What connections can do for you in this country? I said it on this program before, that a particular person involved in the Mudwater incident has close connections to higher-ups in the Ghana police force and was always quick to jump to the defense of the Ghana police force, in particular Clifton Hickens. And was always given first shot at police news. That certainly shows that there is a relationship between that individual and the police. More so between that individual and higher-ups in the police. More so between that individual and Clifton Hickens. Whatever the nature of that relationship is none of my business. The relationship, however, is my business because of the impact of that relationship on policing and the impact of that relationship on fairness in terms of effecting police actions. Okay? Now, I as an upstanding citizen, as far as I'm concerned, I'm an upstanding citizen. But I, as an upstanding citizen, don't believe I can just pick up my phone and call if Hickens or Karim Bash or any of the higher-ups sex man. I don't think I can call on any of them and say, listen, this person has offended me, this police has offended me, I want action taken. But I've seen live videos produced by this particular individual where that has been done. Do you know that the advertisement offering $1 million reward for the identity of Mudwater. Do you know that on that advertisement, instead of a public police number being used for contact, the private number, the personal number of that senior policeman was used? So are you telling me that this is not cronyism? This is not nepotism? Look how quick they find Mudwater. Huh? But like Mudwater said in one of his videos, which I listened to over the weekend in relation to the whole issue, that smacks of anti-manism. And anti-manism doesn't mean homosexuality. Anti means against. It smacks of a lot of anti things. People must expect fairness and an even hand. From the law enforcement agency. And if the police thinks that it is a feather in their cap, the manner they acted in this Mudwater issue, I certainly don't see it as a feather in their cap. I see it as a further exposition of their biases. Paul Slow, a public figure, a regionally respected figure, internationally respected figure, made a report to the Guided Police Force since last year, several months ago, about cyberbullying by Anil Nandlal, allegedly. The police force has not even acknowledged Paul Slow's complaint. Well, I don't know anything about the compromising photos. Maybe you can share them with us. You have them? How compromising were they? Right? Excuse me. Right? They have them acknowledged. Paul Slow's complaint. But within hours, they could find one who has offended. One of their own. I wonder where the Police Wives Association stand on this issue. I really wonder. Nevertheless, that's not my really focus of discussion this morning. But I'm just showing you how this democracy that you're claiming all enjoying. It's not a democracy. They have a mock away. Right? Yes, person. Up until now, they can't find the killers of the Henry's boys, despite the fact that the fat guy said he wasn't going to leave any stone unturned. I guess with that size, you're supposed to have a lot of calories to be burning. So you really and truly should be turning some stones. But I guess he's tired of turning stones. Now, let me just address this thing about who brought into being the law. The David Granger administration brought into being the Cybercrime Act. Did they use it? Or, more specifically, did they use it to target ordinary Guyanese citizens who are doing the very things that ordinary Guyanese citizens have been doing for years? Y'all talk to me about that. You see, one of the things I usually say, and when the Granger administration started in office, and they were bringing law and order to the society, I said to a lot of my friends and associates, I said, listen, Guyanese have had so much freedom over the decades. They have been allowed to be so loose over the decades that people have come to find out that they can be locked up for things that they didn't even know were criminal acts. Now Tony Noel is about to reveal something to us. He could call me and we gonna whistle. Right? Good. In none of these incidents that the Guyana Police Force have used the Cybercrime Act to tackle, to oppress people. Right? None of them lives were threatened. Maybe livelihood, certainly not lives. Somebody is quoting the David Granger, the woman from Essequibo who was made an example during David Granger's time in office. The life of the president was threatened. And in all the freedom of expression, I don't think anybody has the right to threaten another's life, much less that of the president. Right? So let's be real about this. Let's be real about that. So I was saying to people, you're going to get locked up for things you already didn't know you could get locked up for. Matters as simply as not walking on the pavement. It's called jaywalking. It's called jaywalking. And so here it is, the PPP is using the Cybercrime Act to torment ordinary Guyanese citizens. But they're not using the Anti-Money Laundering, Countering and Financing of Terrorism Act. They're not using those acts which are there to prevent corruption in government offices. Those are the things they should use. And give Guyanese citizens a break to express themselves. If they can't do it bold-facedly, let them go behind cartoon characters like Mudwater and do it. But the long and short, a lot of people say the Mudwater incident is really a fallout among homosexuals. So the LGBTQ and all the rest of the alphabet letters community needs to sit these comrades down and talk with them. Right? If it's a fallout among members in the gay community is closely knit. Yeah, I'm sure y'all could sort it out. The state has no right, or nobody has a right to use the state apparatus to exact revenge in issues like these. It's not right. And Guyanese must talk out against it. Guyanese must speak out against it. Good. Let's move on. Done with that. Mudwater, morning, wherever you are. Last Friday to be exact, the program which I replayed earlier this morning, we started looking at the budget and where your money is going. First program on Thursday, we look at what was budgeted, how your money was being spent, or what they allocated. And then Friday, we started talking about where your money is going. Why was you cannot ask me about them? I don't know anything. I don't even know who Boomer is. Oh, yeah. Anyhow, let's talk about Friday. I was looking at. Well, I don't know. That's why. Well, that was always an upstart, you know. Yes. I was looking at where some of the money is being spent. And I spoke about those farm to market roads, those farm access roads, and road upgrades and stuff like that. I want to talk briefly about the impact of where your money is spent. Right? Where your money is spent. You ever heard old people talk about using your own fat to fry you? This government has been using the citizens' own fat to fry them. When you look at the allocations, you can't help concluding once you're a fair-minded person that there are a lot of biases. Well, I guess economics and all these kind of things, budgeting must have bias. A lot of biases. But a good examination of this budget will tell you that there are a lot of biases against public servants. And by extension, black people. Because the majority of public servants are black people. The government tells us that. The PPP always says that. So that is not nothing new I'm saying. Right? That's not nothing new coming from me. Let's talk about this budget and its spending. Road upgrades in Prospect, Martysville, Mahika, Newtonsville. Road upgrades. It means that if your road is in a poor state, full of pothole like BUXTONIAN Dam and so on, or it's just a mud path you're using, they will upgrade them to paved roads, bitumen paved roads. And when all the upgrades in Region 4 are being done in predominantly Indian communities, it has an impact on the lives of the citizens, the residents of those Indian communities, and also on the lives of the residents of black communities. Paul Singh said only racism will get me attention, including his attention. Right, Paul Singh? Paul Singh. Only racism gets the PPP votes. Why do you think they have such a racist and divisive attitude in government? So you have to take a page out of the book of your opponent. What's wrong with that? Paul Singh. If your opponent likes to fight in the gutter, then you go to the gutter. What's wrong with that? If you find trench crappers and jagabats in the gutter, and you want to engage, that's where you have to go. What's wrong with that? Paul Singh. And y'all has come with some infamous names. Like the old and the ground and the cartel is on this program some mornings. Right? So Paul Singh is telling me now, you know me, buddy. We were students at Annandale Secondary. Well, let me deal with that for now. If you and I went to Annandale Secondary together, and you have the gall, the temerity, the gumption, the balls to tell me I'm racist, you don't know me. You do not know me. We just went in the same space. There's none, absolutely none, that I've dealt with at Annandale Secondary and elsewhere, regardless of ethnicity, that can look at me in the eyes and say, you're racist, Kidaki. None. I challenge you to prove otherwise, Paul Singh. I challenge you to prove otherwise. So back to the substantive discussion. You're drinking the PPP soup, as against when we used to eat them hard puri. So you got a different mindset now. I remain me. I've always been true to humanity. Right? Back to the substantive issue. What is the impact of road development, upgrades, repairs, and construction in Indian communities, or the residents of Indian communities and the residents of black communities. Right? We have to understand that impact. And then we can understand why the budget is structured in such a way. Let's talk about impact. Farm access roads. If you are farming in a community, I'm going to use Buxton. I know Buxton well, I live here. Hundreds of acres of lands are available for farming at the back of Buxton. A large portion owned, as in transported property, private proprietorship by residents. Another portion comes under the NDC. And yet another portion comes under what they call grantee and so on. So Buxton got enough lands at the back there to farm. If Buxtonians produce which they do, or if they produce at optimum at the back there, no vehicle, no canter, whether it come from Puerto Rico or quarantine, would find it lucrative enough to come into Buxton to sell produce from Jamaica or Puerto Rico or wherever they come from. So long as the farms at the back of Buxton are producing at an optimum, all of these vehicles that come from all over the place to sell produce in Buxton will find that there is no space for them. So Buxtonians' money will remain in Buxton. That is going to have a financial impact on Buxton and on those very communities that those sellers are coming from. That's one impact I want to identify. As a community, Buxton will be more economically empowered. In terms of food safety, Buxton will be more food secured, because they will be producing enough not only to feed themselves, but also to market externally. And so many of the vendors who come from far away to ply their trade at even Annandale Market can find it difficult surviving because there's a neighborhood community that is producing a whole lot that they know will be able to market in Annandale. Let's keep that in mind. And so where farm access roads are established is important, because farm access roads will aid in production. It will aid the producer. Let me give you an example. I said to you that Hubu Dam, Puerto Rico, expanded in agricultural production only after the then PPP government, I think, invested in the development of farm access roads in those communities. And so people were able to occupy the lands, establish homesteads on the lands, and farm the majority of it. And so if you go into Puerto Rico there, every farm, at least there's a home on it, because people are actually living where they're farming, and they're farming the back of where the homes are. So they're at home all the time farming. But they can do that because they have all-weather roads. So transporting their produce from the farm to the marketplace is easy. Nothing stressful about that. They can do it whether it is raining or whether it is shining. But hop across to a place like Buxton, the Buxtonians can go to the back there and they can produce They can occupy 1,000,000 acres of land, assuming it's present. And they can produce all they want. But it will only be beneficial to them dry season. Because there's no all-weather road, there's no farm access road to talk about. We still talk about Company Dam and Sideline Dam and Middlewalk Dam, which lead into the back dam, into the farmlands. If you're looking on YouTube, check KAMSTV, 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 right? So, it's a disincentive to the Buxtonian farmers. It is a disincentive to the Buxtonian farmers. Because many will tell you, like I said, they're producing behind there. But in last rainy season, they lost a lot of crop. Or should I say they lost a lot of produce? They lost both. Crops because some amount of flooding took place and crops suffered. Produce because produce were there, but they were unable to get them to the marketplace because of the bad state of the dams. When it is dry weather, the road is fairly passable. The dam is fairly passable. They can go in with tractors, they can go in with horse-drawn carts, they can go in with buses, they can go in with cars. And bring out their produce. Even cycles, whether motorcycles or pedal cycles, they can do that and bring out produce. But once it starts to rain, those dams become impassable. It's difficult for cycles to go. It's difficult for cars to go. Difficult for buses to go. Tractors go. But in going, they further damage the road. They further damage the road. So these are the things to understand. These are the things to analyze your budget for. What is government's budgetary policy in terms of developing communities, farming infrastructure in this case? And analyzing these roads and these farm access roads which I talked about, Parika, Timeri, Big Baibu, Molson Creek, and Abari. You must recognize that black communities are not catered for in these farm access roads. And so predominantly Indian communities are getting farm access roads. And that will aid the expansion of their agricultural produce. It means that will make them more food secure. It will give them more economic growth because they're now producing at levels that will not only feed them, their families and communities, but will also leave surplus to be sold outside of those communities and therefore bring in foreign capital, if you want to call it that. I'm using foreign capital loosely there. And so if they're producing enough that they can come to Buxton and sell, it means they're moving money from Buxton to those communities. And so their economic growth would be at a faster rate. But in communities like Buxton, where there is no supporting mechanism for farming, less is produced, and so they have to spend more externally, which means income is leaving the community. And so there's less to develop the economic fortunes of the citizens, the residents of those communities. And so poverty is engendered in those communities as against the other communities which are getting capital for growth and development. That's the impact of budget for you. Where your money is spent, on what it is spent, has a whole lot to do with whether you grow economically or not. Let me just juxtapose this to you. I haven't examined the Ministry of Sports, Youth and Culture budget. But let me just assume, because it's a policy of the government, that when you look at the ministry's budget, you're going to see a lot of grounds and football field and so on being developed in communities, black communities. So they will say we are giving to black communities. Like the ground that is being developed in Melanie by you know who, right? And the ground that was retro developed or underdeveloped in Buxton, right? Yes, they will tell you that they're doing more grounds in black communities. But what are the economic spin-offs possible from those grounds compared to a farm access road? So when they're giving other people's things like farm access roads and so on to aid production and economic growth, they're giving other people balls to play with. Because the balls have no real capacity of economically empowering them. They're giving them an outlet for their energies, pent-up energies, which ordinarily should have been used in the farm. Right? That's the kind of analysis I like us to do. What's the impact of your money that is being spent? They fry you with your own fat. Public servants who are predominantly black are paying consistently, if not the most, taxes in this country. A high rate of tax. And those very tax dollars are being used against them in budgeting. Who vex lose? But that's the reality. It's now 7:57. There are lots of things to talk about. So let's talk about the next thing. Y'all $2,000 note. You see, Guyanese have a way of getting caught up in discussion of people as against issues. And I try to keep away from the discussion of people as against issues. And I am hoping that KAMSTV and BUXTONIAN Morning Time will encourage you, as it has been doing over the year, to examine and discuss issues. And don't fight up with people. People have an impact on issues, but the greater thing to focus on is on issue. The big discussion, and I always say, people take the PPP lightly, but they're not to be taken lightly. I always say Barrett Jagdeo, third term, power hungry, and Clement Roy, in my books, are two of the best real politicians in this country. They understand the craft. I guess they read the Wise Prince, Machiavelli, from back to front and front to back, like Janet did. Because they know just when to do what, to create what distraction. You see when they reveal the $2,000 note? With Barrett Jagdeo's signature? For Guyanese to focus on that as against the discrimination in the budget? That $2,000 note ain't got no impact on you right now. Well, it will have an impact, and it is showing an impact, but we'll talk about that. But the release of that information, that image, is where the bigger impact is. The bigger impact, the intent there is to distract you from the ills of the budget. nobody talking. Is the fat guy is the president? Is he named should up on the $2,000 note? Is Ashley Singh is the finance minister with responsibility for finance? Is he named should up on the note? How bad Jack your name there? That's the main cusp of the discussion around the $2,000 note. The color. The color. It red. Is the PPP color? The $5,000 the green is Granger color. How does the color of a note impact your spending power? How does the color of a note impact your economic freedom? How does it impact your upward mobility or your stagnation? Colors of money ain't got no impact on nothing. But that is what Guyanese are talking about. But this is really where the real issue is. We have to have an understanding, apart from this thing coming out, these images and so on coming out now to distract you from the budget. There's also a reason why you now have the issuance of a $2,000 note. And we as citizens have to understand why governments invest in the release of larger notes in their economy. Why do governments find it necessary to release bigger notes? I haven't been following it, but I mean I can Google it and find it, but you could do that too. Let me encourage you. Students must do research. What is the biggest note in Venezuela? What is the biggest note in Brazil? Go to the poorest African country or poorest country on the African continent and find out what is the biggest note. When you hear African moods, I don't really look at it every now and again. I might glimpse one and hear, but 10,000 naira, 50,000 naira, right, for bread. Right? Newton is telling me that Zimbabwe has a $10,000 note. Good? Do your research and you will find the poorer countries having the larger notes because of inflation, devaluation. When you have inflation in your country, especially when it is running away like I think it is in Guyana, they call them galloping inflation. When you have inflation in your country, things become more expensive. People have to walk around, especially in a cash economy like Guyana's. People have to walk around with more money to access goods and services. It makes them more susceptible, right? It makes it easier for criminals to target them and rob them of large sums of money. Are we following the reasoning? With inflation, things become more expensive. And so to get goods and services, people have to walk around with more money. And in Ghana, if you look at the currency notes, then walking around with more money is a bulky thing. Ghana is not a plastic economy. Ghana is cash-based. Everything you got to do, you do with cash in this country almost. Good? And so instead of having people walking around with large traveling bags of money to attract the eyes of the criminal-minded, you have to devise a plan to reduce the bulk. And the plan to reduce the bulk is to issue larger notes. And so the issuance of the $2,000 bill is not out of fashion and style. It is out of necessity because inflation is on the rise. And Guyanese are not focusing on that. And many of our social media commentators are not explaining that. Maybe they don't understand, maybe they do, and they don't care to help you to understand. But that $2,000 note will result in, and look for it in the news if they ever publish it, or pay attention to the Bank of Ghana reports if you recognize. The issuance of a $2,000 note will result in the reduction in circulation of smaller notes. So you might find a reduction in the coins. You may not find a $1. They still have a $1 coin? Yes, I think. Right? But the $1 coin may be moved out of circulation. Or the $5 coin or the $10 coin. Those coins might be moved out of circulation. And so you go to the small note, $20 note, $100, $20, $50, $100 note. You are going to have smaller amounts of those notes in circulation. You might have a total removal of the $20 or $50 note. And so the lowest note you might have in this country eventually is the $100. Continue to pay attention and remember, you heard it on KAMSTV, because that's what we're here for, education. The issuance of that $2,000 note, while right now, the publication of the images and so on, is meant for distraction from the budget. The issuance of that note eventually is as a result of inflation. And if you want to track inflation in your society, look at the size of the notes that they publish, they issue. Right? Look at the size of the notes that they issue. And that is why I ask you, check and see what is the biggest note in Venezuela. And you can check and see when it was issued. Check Brazil. Check on the African continent. And you'll come to understand that the issuance of these notes are not for style, but they really meant they are a reaction to the rate at which inflation is kicking in the country. And so Guyanese must be aware that we are faced with serious inflation in this society. And it is expected to be long-term and long-lasting and impactful. Because if governments recognize that an inflationary situation is short-term and can be controlled, can be pulled back, as we like to say, they don't issue notes in reaction to it. Right? They do not issue notes in reaction to short-term inflation. And so once you have these notes being issued, you know that this is perhaps a state of permanency, if I dare argue that. That is expected. And with that reasoning, we must ask ourselves again, what impact does the budget have on your life? The $75,000 tax ceiling, how impactful is that going to be to put more money in your pocket when inflation is on the rise and it galloping like a jackass or racehorse. Quick time, the benefits of that. Well, I don't even know if you had any benefits of it. I don't even know if you saw any benefits of it. Right? But quick time, let's assume there were benefits to be had. Quick time, the benefits of that increased tax ceiling will be reduced. It will be eliminated. It will disappear. Right? Y'all get the picture? Understand that. With inflation, I know you felt it already. The 7% increase that was given in December, gone through the wind already, gone through the door. As I say, got paid by the fan. You don't feel the impact of these minuscule increases because of the rate at which inflation is increasing. That's what we have to focus on.
I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Together, my comrades, we will build a brand new Guyana, a country where all are equal opportunity. So let us begin now to show loyalty to Guyana by showing love and respect for all Guyanese. My brothers, my sisters, we will live and die here together. On to one people, one nation, one destiny. For harmonious living, cooperation will be forever. In work and play as we live as proud Guyanese. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free. Well, it's time we settle all the rich lands in the interior. Our natural resources are there in great quantity. And we will do farming and establish jobs by the border. We'll grow more food so we could fill all Guyanese. My greatest desire is to serve my country, Guyana, and sincerely help my Guyana to move along. Our government asks us that we study hard and we learn the things that will help Guyana to become strong. Guyana, I want to serve my country. Guyana, beautiful, happy and free. Guyana, let's cooperate with our government to help develop Guyana the free, to help develop Guyana the free.
To help develop Guyana the free. Yes, it's necessary that we play our part to help develop Guyana the free. Good morning to you. Welcome to another program of Buxtonian Morning Time. It is now 7 hours 15 on the first day of the second month of the year 2022. That's the 1st of February 2022. Welcome to another program of Buxtonian Morning Time. I trust you had a progressive and successful day yesterday. You remain safe. You did not cause anyone to be infected nor affected. And you protected yourself and family, relatives and friends. I trust that you would have done your part as a citizen. Your part that will help this country to be the democracy that we want it to be, and go on the developmental trajectory that we want it to be. Budget debates got started yesterday, and you would have heard, those of you who are following, you would have heard some interesting presentations and lots of issues highlighted as to what is happening with our natural resource fund and so on. If you remember yesterday morning, I did take some time and explain the issuance of that $2,000 note. And in our discussion, I said to you that that note is a response to inflation, right? And you are likely to see the reduction of the smaller notes in circulation. I told you to listen out for the news. And when you observe it, remember that you first heard it said on KAMSTV. Good? With all of that said, I want to say, if I were to be a Obia man, I would be a damn good Obia man. But they got Obia in politics. Right? Or so we might think they got Obia in politics. Because I hear a lot of people say, Jagdio and others has got to Suriname, forget Obia. And so on for y'all. But the reality is, once you pay attention, once you understand what you're dealing with, you will be able to recognize when things are not the way they ought to be. And so I'm saying all of that to say that I noticed this morning, I noticed on the newsroom published 15 hours ago, that there's now a guy in a $10,000 and $100 coin in circulation. They say the $10,000 coin is commemorative and it is being sold currently for $18,000. Well, let me make another prediction for you. After a few mornings, they will say that the Guyana $10,000 coin is legal tender. It's no longer commemorative. It can be used to transact business in the country. If you remember when the $50 note was issued, it was issued as a commemorative note. I think it was Guyana's, 50th independence anniversary, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But it was first issued as a commemorative note. And then they said, okay, it's no longer commemorative. It can be used as a legal tender to transact business. It is acceptable. Right? Trust me. Look out again. And you will tell me that you first heard it on KAMSTV. Soon, the $10,000 coin is going to be used in our daily business transactions. And the $100 coin. Remember I said to you, it is likely that those smaller denomination coins will go out of circulation or will face reduced circulation. The $100 coin is already out. It means that there will be no need for a $100 bill. And so, like I also said, the smaller notes are likely to go out of circulation. I had predicted that the $20 note was going to be pushed out, and so the smallest note would have been the $100 note. It would appear as though the $100 note is getting shafted also. Because if you have a $100 coin, then I'm not sure you will need a $100 note. Good? Just pay attention to that. That is what KAMSTV is here for. Bringing information, sharing knowledge, and helping our citizens to understand what's happening in our country. Good? That said and done. It's a long time I didn't ask you to share the live. And so you can go right ahead and share the live. You see, sometimes we take a lot of things for granted. And even us who are broadcasters, us who are hosting these programs and so on, sometimes take a lot of things for granted. For example, we take for granted that people will share once they come onto the program. It doesn't always happen. Right? We take for example that people will make a financial contribution to the upkeep of the program. It doesn't always happen. Right? We take for granted that a lot of people will understand or be reasonable enough to understand that not because you have 700 or 800 viewers, each of them will make a financial contribution to the program. And so I'm saying this particular thing to say that there's some people who just walk around the country, the society, believing that, hey, when they host of these programs, as for financial contribution, they are becoming rich because all of the viewers are contributing something to them. Far be it from the truth, right? You might have a viewership of 700, let's say, and you ask for donations, contributions, upkeep, whatever you want to call it. And at the end of the day, you receive a contribution from one person or two persons. At no point in time can you expect, unless you're living in La La Land, 50% of the viewers to contribute to the upkeep of your program. At least that's my experience. I don't know about the other folks, but that's my experience. And so when you got people walking around the country believing that you can live off of what your viewers contribute, you know that they are in La La Land. Good? Welcome to the program. Please share. That's all I'm asking you. Share. Share. Click share. It's important that more people get to hear what we have to share. Good? Please share. It's Tuesday. Dr. Hines is in the house, and I won't stand in between yourselves and the Honorable Doctor for much longer. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Welcome to the program.
Good morning.
How you been keeping?
As usual, keeping, doing what I do every day. Wake up, thank God for life, and proceed to make my contribution to the society around me.
And yes, you do what you usually do every day, and so I know that you've been paying attention to all of what has been unfolding in Guyana. Let me say to my viewers, because I saw this in the news earlier today, that when the Georgetown Hospital went up in flames, a section, I did say to them, likely arson to cover up some misdemeanor, some fraud or something. And so the news is out there now that this Indian doctor, or Guyanese doctor of Indian descent, is being investigated for that arson, that fire. And he has also been dismissed for sexual harassment on the job. Good. His name was being withheld until such time that Rickford Burke put it out there last evening. And so I see his name is being published now. Good. I am saying that to say, again, I told you so. Arson must have been involved. A lot of these fires are arson related. Last week we had another fire, Sunday to be exact. Some people would say last week, some people would say the first day of the week. The GNIC went up in flames. Right? GNIC Wharf went up in flames. You have any intuition? Have you been hearing anything? Is there anything you suspect in relation to these fires?
No, I am not an expert on fires. I leave that to the government, the president and others who, whenever there are fires of public places, they immediately attribute it to their political opponents. So they're the experts on fires. I am not.
But are you an expert on budgeting? Because
No, I'm not an expert on budgeting either.
because I like I said, a budget debate started yesterday. And some of the revelations, we know that it's a, what, $552.9 billion budget. And if you were to examine the estimates, you would see that big spending is happening in terms of infrastructure development. But a closer look at the big spending will say how discriminatory that spending is. We have the issue of the Region 4 budget being prepared by the REO solo, and the Region 4 budget being cut, while smaller regions have had an increase in spending. What's your takeaway from that in particular?
Well, one, it's consistent with the PPP's attitude to the economy. It started with the first budget they presented in 2020, continued in 2021, and now we see it continuing in 2022. That there is a social class bias in how the PPP spends money, where it spends money, and there is an ethnic bias in the way it spends money too. And I'm extremely glad that we are in the age of instant news, and that these things are coming out. You know, people always say to the opposition that you don't have data. And I've always been very suspicious of that call for data. Because, you know, data depends on whose data you're presenting. But I think important interventions like the budget are places where you can go to and look for the kind of data. You look at the numbers, you look at the allocations, the expenditures, and you ask yourself what is behind those expenditures. I'm making the point that the government is presenting data in the budget. What is lacking is an explanation of what is behind those data, or that data. What does it mean when Region 1, Region 2, Region 3, Region 1 and 2 have bigger budgets or bigger allocations than Region 4? What does it mean when Region 4's allocation is cut? What does it mean when Region 3 allocation is almost the same as Region 4, but Region 3 has a smaller population? In effect, what you can glean from looking at the expenditures or the allocation for Regions 1, 2, 3, and 4 is that in PPP's constituency and where they control the regional government, they have allocated more money in real terms, real money, and also more money in per capita, the amount of money and the number of residents in that region. And then you see allocation to Region 1, which they won. It's a majority Amerindian region, small region, but it has almost three times more money is allocated to it than Region 4. And in a sense, what you're seeing there is a pitting of not only Indian Guyanese against African Guyanese in terms of the unequal distribution of resources as far as regional allocations are concerned. But here we see the pitting of Amerindians against Africans. And so the subtext behind the budget is clear for us to see. A lot of commentators are paying attention to the fact that there is not very much in the budget for poor people. I'm very glad people are paying attention to that. Not many people are highlighting the ethnic inequalities or inequities in the budget, but they're there. Social class inequity and ethnic inequities. And these things will have political consequences. You can look at the Region 1 allocation and you see clearly that is aimed at buying votes from Amerindians. Amerindians, over the last couple of elections, certainly the last election, broke 60% or thereabout for the people, 40% from the rest of the parties. We have the Liberty Party by Mr. Schuman coming on board. He didn't get very many Amerindian votes, but Schuman has been complaining of discrimination against Amerindians. And when you see that kind of expenditure, that kind of money that is being allocated to it, it's aimed at consolidating the PPP's vote and shutting out Schuman and others from getting close to Amerindians. Fact of the matter is, elections in Guyana are going to be very close. We saw a very close election in 2011, very close in 2015, and even an election that is inconclusive like 2020, if we take the naked numbers that they have presented, very close. And political parties have to be very clinical about where its perceived strengths are, where their perceived strengths are, and what constituencies you target. We hear about crossover votes. And when people talk about crossover votes, they're talking about Indians crossing over to the PNC/coalition and Africans crossing over to the PPP. I've always rubbished that kind of argument. There's not very much crossover between Africans and Indians as far as PPP and PNC are concerned. Right? You win elections by, in Guyana, in my humble view, by how much of your base you're able to bring out. And then you top that up with what you get from the Amerindians. And I think this budget is an election budget also. So it's a budget that reflects the PPP's priorities as far as social class is concerned, the priorities as far as ethnicity is concerned. And then it's geared towards towards the next election. If you give the rich as much resources as you give them through taxes and so on there in the budget, or lack of taxes on them, people may ask, well, there's not very much votes you can get from the business class. And that is true. What you get from the business class is money. And we know that elections now are not just money to be spent on jerseys and T-shirts and those kinds of things, but money to be spent on lobbying, as the PPP did effectively at the last election. They sold the narrative and they needed money to hire consultants so on. So in exchange for what you give to the business class, you give them money, because in the end, that's what they get. They get resources, they get money. And part of that money comes back to the party as campaign financing, because we don't have campaign finance laws that prevent businesses from giving parties over a certain amount. We don't have campaign finance laws like that. So part of the money that is steered to the businesses come back as donations to the parties. And the second thing about keeping the business class happy is that we saw the role the business class played in regime change. They used their contacts overseas. They used their bully pulpit to pitch a certain kind of narrative. And so that's a benefit you get. Now, I say that, all of that, not just to point out facts, but also to say that the government has an unfair advantage in that they're the government, they control the purse strings. There's little checks and balances as far as spending is concerned by the executive. The opposition doesn't get very much opportunity to alter the government proposed spending, So the government has an unfair advantage, first of all, in spending, but the government is also using its control of the purse string to advance its ethnic agenda, which is extremely important. People don't like to talk about it, but we have to talk about it because it's true. Those spending priorities have ethnic impact. They impact Indian Guyanese differently. They impact African Guyanese differently. Although the budget is an anti-working class budget, very anti-working class. There are other ways in which the PPP can use spending and are using spending in the budget to quiet Indian Guyanese working class and the Amerindian working class. So it's an anti-working class budget, but it's also a budget that has some ethnic biases. And so there is some resources in the budget to quiet the working class, the Indian working class. And we see now a pitch to quiet the Amerindians. So it's a very, very instructive budget as far as the PPP's national agenda is concerned.
Instructive indeed. I noticed an analysis of the budget basically was showing where the establishment of farm access roads, for example, did not really cater to Afro-Guyanese communities, especially given the fact that under the APNU administration, 4 communities were selected for agricultural development. If I can say, reinvigoration of the agricultural sector in those communities under the RAID project. Naturally, one of the things I know those communities have been crying out for is farm access roads. We have had visits from Zulfikar, who is the agriculture minister here, making promises to BUXTONIANs. Well, here is this budget. Farm access roads are there, but none for places like Buxton, Ithaca, Mocha, Triumph. the red areas. Likewise, you look at other aspects of the budget and you see this continued pattern of um, discriminatory allocations. I know you have pointed out to the fact that it's an election budget kind of. But what are the deeper implications for these discriminatory allocations?
Well, there are several deeper implications. One implication is that it gives the PPP an unfair advantage. I pointed that out. But from a larger and deeper societal standpoint, you have the implication of instability, because what you're doing is that you're fueling instability, you're fueling anger on the part of poor people of all races, and then you are fueling a very tenuous ethnic environment, because you are encouraging ethnic dissatisfaction on the part of the old group, in this case, African Guyanese. And you don't know where that will take us. Governments usually gamble, and I think the PPP is gambling, that African Guyanese would take whatever comes to them lying down. They're gambling on the fact that there is instability in the major political party that represented African Guyanese. And they're gambling that they would not pay the price for what they're doing, that the potential ethnic and social upheaval would not occur. So that's the gamble of the PPP. But that does not take away from the fact that the big consequence is that you are encouraging social instability and ethnic instability. The other large impact, of course, is on the question of poverty. And I think that is equally important as the ethnic consequences. We have a poverty rate of between 35 and 45%. It's a poverty that is a hangover from colonialism. Because what slavery and colonialism did was to encourage the development of wealth for external countries, meaning the European countries. And so as they developed European countries, our countries became underdeveloped. The Rodney thesis of how Europe underdeveloped Africa could be how Europe underdeveloped the Caribbean and Guyana. And so when we came to independence, we came with this endemic poverty. And although successive governments after independence have tried in some ways to tackle poverty, certainly in the early decades after independence, by the time we got to the end of the 1980s, the end of the Cold War and the onset of globalization, we came right back to the issue of poverty, because the major economic thrust over the last 30 years has been the trickle-down economics structural adjustment, which in themselves encourage the inequality that we've seen in the society. So there is an objective element that fuels poverty. But there is also the subjective in terms of what choices political parties, whenever they get in office, what choices have they made in the little space they have to determine internal policy. And I don't think governments, all governments, in the post-Cold War era, I don't think they've really sat down and thought through the question of poverty and the importance of undermining poverty and getting rid of it as a means of national development. You know, if you compare the policies of the last 30 years of successive governments, most of them have been PPP governments, to the policies of the early era, the first 30 years after independence, you would see a concerted effort on the part of the governments to tackle the question of poverty. The emphasis on universal education, the emphasis on health care, were direct policies aimed at dealing with poverty and the underdevelopment of people. But over the last 30 years, there has not been a deliberate effort on the part of governments to deal with the question of poverty. So although we may have made some dents in poverty in the first 30 years of independence, those have been canceled out by the kind of economic thrust over the last 30 years. And so we come to the era of oil. And oil wealth by itself does not decrease poverty. Wealth, the presence of wealth in a country does not automatically mean that poverty will be taken care of, because that wealth will have to be redistributed if you're going to tackle poverty. You have to make a conscious effort, as the early post-independence governments did, to redistribute the wealth. Now we have more wealth now than we did in the early years of independence. But like I said, the government has to make a conscious effort to deal with the question of poverty. If we eradicate poverty, then we give ourselves a chance of developing our country and developing our people. Your budget and your spending priorities in that budget can give one a sense of whether you want to tackle poverty head on. And there is nothing in the budget that suggests the government has thought about this problem of poverty. There is absolutely no policy intervention in the budget that suggests that they want to tackle poverty. Our party, the Working People's Alliance, put on the table since 2018 a proposal that is aimed directly at tackling poverty, not tackling it in an indirect way. In the early years of independence, the government spent on education, they spent on healthcare, and they were therefore tackling the question of poverty in an indirect way. Economics and economists now come to the conclusion that the more effective way of tackling poverty is not by spending indirectly, but also spending directly, giving people access to money in a direct way. And hence the policy of cash transfer. And as I've been saying over and over again, there's a difference between giving people some cash as a handout, a one-off thing here, a one-off thing there, a $30,000 a year, a $250 million a year. That's not cash transfer. Cash transfer is a studied policy. And you can have what is called conditional transfer. Cash transfer, where you give the cash on conditions, or in some instances, they have unconditional cash transfer, which you give people the cash without any conditions. The more popular one has been the conditional cash transfers, where you give people money directly and you tie that to education, you tie it to health. Whereas the other way around is that the government spends on education and health, and they hope that that will then impact poverty at the individual level. And as I explained last year, you can build 1 million schools. If you don't get children to attend schools, those schools are not going to impact on education in a positive way. You can spend a lot of money on health infrastructure, building hospitals, etc., etc. But if people are eating badly, they don't have access to nutritional food, then you are not making a dent in health. You're not upgrading the collective health of your country. And so therefore what giving people money directly does is that you are giving them a direct investment in people. And in countries that have adopted it, we have seen decrease in poverty. We have seen increase in school attendance. We have seen improvement in nutrition and health. And so I saw in this morning papers, I think ITRO News reporting that Arun Kemraj, young Indian Guyanese economist, came out and he said, cash transfer. Our own Winston Jordan, who, when the proposal was first made, was relatively somewhat lukewarm towards it. He has come out and endorsed it. Serious economists in Guyana and all over the world are saying that this is a proposal. What the PPP did is took that proposal and paid lip service to it and tried to use it as a mask for them giving handouts to their supporters and giving small handouts to people outside of their support base in order to keep them quiet. Nowhere in the budget is there any proposal that is aimed at dealing with the question of poverty. So you can become the richest oil country. I mean, we have a growth projected of 47% growth for this year. The question is, how does that growth impact human development? Because ultimately, a country develops not just by modernizing your infrastructure, that is important, modernizing your, not just roads and so on, but school buildings, hospitals, etc. But it's also about equipping your people with the necessary skills that they can deal with this modern economy. And the place you start is by tackling poverty. The less impoverished people are, the more productive labor is. So you've got to modernize your labor power. And what keeps back labor power in Guyana is poverty. You can bring, the PPP said the 50,000 jobs. You can create 50,000 jobs. But if people are not skilled to take advantage of skilled jobs, you still are not benefiting them. And so the budget is a failure in terms of tackling the fundamental question of poverty. I continue to argue, and the WPA continues to argue, that unless and until we solve the problem of poverty, we are not going to develop Guyana. And sadly, once again, the PPP has put forward the biggest budget in the history of Guyana, and there is nothing in that budget that tackles the most fundamental problem in the country.
But the PPP and its supporters are arguing otherwise. The PPP says that they have put more disposable income in the hands of Guyanese. They've quoted, for example, 25,000, moving the student grant, as they call it, from $15,000 to $25,000. Old age pension from what? $25,000 to $30,000. Am I right there? No, $25,000 to $28,000. Public assistance from $12,000 to $14,000. Shifting of the income tax ceiling from $65,000 to $75,000. They argue that all of these things are going to give Guyanese more disposable income, and by extension address the issue of poverty.
If you raise disposable income by 10% and cost of living is 3 times that, has gone up 3 times that, what you're giving people is not keeping up with the rising cost of living. So you can boast about all those things you give, but you have to discuss those things relative to cost of living. If the price of food goes up by $10,000 and you give old age pensioners $3,000, that is not keeping up with the price of food. It's a negative incentive you're giving them. So, again, the PPP or any government can talk about, I give this, and talk about numbers. What we have to do is to look at those numbers relative to what's happening in the country as far as cost of living is concerned. Because if income does not keep up with cost of living, every person on this show this morning knows the answer to that. So the PPP is not fooling anybody. They're not fooling anybody. All right? If you increase spending by 44%, as you've done in this budget, but you increase spending on wages or spending on a wage pension by 5%, you are not helping those groups. It means that the money, the extra money that you are spending is being spent somewhere else. It is going somewhere else. Amanza this year, yesterday, made the interesting argument that the IMF says, look, the inefficiency rate in Guyana is 41%, which means we waste 41% of monies that we spend on projects. And that waste can be anything. It can be through corruption. It can be through contracts in which the contractor is not giving you the word for your money, and so on. Anyhow, they say, look, we waste 41% in it. And we have 218 or thereabout $1 million for capital projects. If you take that rate of 41%, she is arguing that we are likely to waste about $89 billion. And that wastage obviously will go in somebody's pocket. It doesn't go into the ocean. It goes into people's pocket. And so the PPP can throw around numbers. We're spending $218 billion to modernize the infrastructure of the country. We're spending it on capital projects. But when 90 billion of that money is being wasted, you're not doing business. You're just fooling yourself and fooling people, or trying to fool people. So, no, the PPP and the government are basically just trying to pull wool over our eyes. Unfortunately, it's not working.
It's not working. But then we see the benefits of the trickle down now. You've seen the removal of a whole lot of taxes and excise duties and so on from importers of big vehicles for mining, for forestry, for the extractive industry, for the oil industry. Will those relief granted to these sectors in any way aid the smaller man, if I can say that, or the society to address the poverty issue?
History is not an experience around the world has shown that trickle-down economics does not bring benefit. I mean, you're giving the incentive to the entrepreneurial class with the hope that they will create jobs, and through jobs, income, that wealth that you are giving them will trickle down there. And no, nowhere in the world, including the United States of America's trickle-down economics work. I mean, none other than George Bush, '" , called for a gentler, kinder capitalism in the early 1990s. And it was a critique of the trickle-down economics. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because you are assuming that people whose objective is to make as much profit as possible would intentionally allow some of that wealth that they're creating to come down to the working people. First of all, the human mind doesn't work like that. And second, the logic of capitalism does not allow for any coming down or trickling down. In the old days, that's why they call it trickle down, you know? Some of that wealth that was made by the entrepreneurial class used to trickle down to workers. That's why they call trickle. A little bit used to come down. But now it's not even trickling down. It's not trickling down. So it's a failed economic system as far as empowering working people. If you don't want to empower working people and you want to empower the upper class, then it's a very good model. But if you're talking about empowering working people, if you're talking about decreasing and stamping out poverty as we should, then it's a bad model. It's a bad model. That is why the cash transfer is meant as a kind of assurance that if nothing trickles down, the people will have something in their hands. So if nothing trickles down, at least you take a 10% of the oil resources.
In our presentation yesterday, Amanda Walton this year pointed out that a whole lot of the NRF money was in the budget, not properly identified as to what it will be used for.
Right.
Right? Christopher Ram also, in his publication, says that he believes
Yes.
that money in the budget there is illegal, if that's the exact words he used, because, as he pointed out, one of the clauses said that this money should only be used for national development priorities.
Yes, right.
What's your take on both
It's a
Amanda's
very,
observation?
very valid argument. The government is going to say everything in the budget is developmental. Because you see, the law does not say what development projects are. The law is not going to say that. If you go to court, you'll have to make the argument to the court. You'll have to define what development is. And the government is going to argue everything in the budget is development. But everything in the budget is not development. And so therefore, there is a validity to the argument. And I would love to see that being tested in court. I would love to see that. Like I said, the question before the court would be whether the money spent by the government, whether it is. The government will then have to say in its budget, which it does not. That is why the argument is interesting. It will have to say the money from the oil is being spent on A, B, C, D, E. And A, B, C, D, E are developmental in nature. The budget doesn't say where the money is being spent. And that's where I think the argument has strength. You see, they're spending 120 something million dollars from the money. Let me go back to cash transfer. If we were to take a 10% of that 126 million, it will come up to about $12.6 million. And if we were to take that 12 something million dollars and divide it among the households in Guyana, I don't have my math before me, it's $12.6 million. At least more people will get something if you were to use cash transfer. Or if you were to have taken 10% of the 600 million in the Natural Resource Fund, which is the rateable, not what they take out, 10% of the $60 million, it would be $600 million, it would be 60 million US dollars. And you take that and you divide that among the 200 and something households. People will get some guaranteed income. Some things that people badly need to do to deal with the question. Most people are going to take that money and spend it on food. To begin with, because the price of food has gone up. We've seen that. People are crying, people are bawling about the price of food stuff. Imagine if you have about 200 households, 200,000 households, and you divide that $60 million, people get a little small piece. But the government is not thinking along those lines. It's not.
And so is it too early for the opposition, let's say, to Project Court to make a determination on the legality of this money in the budget?
You have to go to court. The opposition, Chris Ramos raised it, he can go to court. He went to court and if the no confidence vote, he can go to court and test this law. It doesn't have to be just the opposition.
Okay.
Anybody can.
And as we're talking about the what's happening in the parliament, basically in terms of this budget and testing of laws and the provisions and so on, I noticed also yesterday that the speaker has disallowed the motion to sanction a whole host of government representatives in parliament over that same NRF bill and maize being removed and stuff. Did you expect a different act from the speaker, or you thought he would have done differently this time?
It's an easy question. I would be a fool if I expected different.
And so why would, despite the fact that there's a no confidence motion against the speaker, identifying this very kind of behavior, why do you think the speaker continues to rule in such a manner? Because on the same issue, a number of opposition parliamentarians are now before the Privilege Committee. And they basically have moved a similar motion for government ministers to be before the Privilege Committee. It takes two to tango, we see. Why do you think he continues along this line?
He has the power to do it.
And that's the only reason?
I don't know if that's the only reason. I can tell that's the primary reason. Okay.
It's now 8 hours 15 on the 1st of February. And we're talking with Dr. David HINDS on the budget and other issues. Usually around this time we open up the lines. Dr. HINDS, anything you wish to touch before we open the lines?
No. The callers sometimes have more profound things to say than I do.
All right. So the lines are open. 625-933 is the number to call. Just a reminder that tomorrow the WPA will be on. The WPA speaks. Dr. Clive Thomas, Professor Clive Thomas, and other representatives, Takumo Gonsi, myself, and we're going to be talking about the budget. Dr. Clive Thomas will be examining the provisions, I guess, and among other things. All right, so tune in. That's at 6:30 tomorrow, right here on KAMSTV. Lines are open 6225933.
Tonight on Politics 101, we have an Aubrey Norton who will give the PNC perspective. Tomorrow night, as you said, it will be WPA night. And Thursday night, it'll be AFC night. So we have a week of the political parties analyzing the budget.
All right, I have, let's start the ball rolling with voice notes. All right, let me take this first call. Call A Live, good morning.
Good morning, Kentucky and Dr. HINDS.
Morning.
Now I listened to the first part where you were talking about this money and so. I could remember last year, I asked Minister Jordan, we need to hear from you, even if it's a voice note, let us hear your voice. When I asked on one of his Thursday shows about the slipping of the Guyana dollar, I mentioned where the IMF was to do something in Guyana. And as soon as you hear about the IMF, you tell yourself that your money will slide. Now I could remember way back as a small girl, being the eldest of the family, I was trusted to go and buy goods. At $20, used to give us a 100-pound bag of light flour, 112 pounds bag of sugar, and a 22-gallon bag of rice, good rice. And you would still get things like margarine, lard, good margarine, nut butter, Ovaltine, milk. You might put it down, you used to get back change from the $20. I could remember if you find 5 cents or a cent, and you go to the baker shop in the area too, and you buy cent ends, you used to get lazy because you're going to eat your food when the food was being cooked from the cent ends, and you used to get the cent ends running you for about 2 to 3 days. And when a country removes from its spending money, cents from it, because those days you had cent, 5 cents, 10 cents, 25 cents, and you take that off, it tells you where the inflation rate is. And as you rightly said, that with this $2,000 bill, we will lose lower currency in the Guyana economic chain. Because if you go, the only place that has sense, that only have sense, that it remove sense, and now they will remove in lower denomination in the dollar chain. That tells us that Guyana is really going the way of Venezuela and the other countries where the currency is that low. I remembered asking many persons what would have happened to us, seeing that we become an oil-rich state, if our dollar would have been trading now on the NASDAQ or the Dow Jones. But I've gotten my answer. Instead of it trading there, it's trading lower. And I think that the economic persons, the person who deal with economics, should be able to come out and to be truthful, like how Minister Jordan was, and let the country on the whole know where our position is in the financial chain, how high we are or how low we are. And once the printing big money, that means our spending, it is dropping. That is my comment today. And thanks, I'm using the new phone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rhonda. All right, so let's take a voice note. Unless Dr. Hines, you want to comment?
No.
All right, let's see the first one. This is a long one. This looks like 10 minutes worth of voice note from Coffee. What's happening?
Inflationary theories, and I think you're right on target. What I came away from the conversation was that you were ridiculing President Jack Dill's economic policy. He who claims to be a Russian-trained economist, as well as Dr. Ashley Singh's fiscal policy. Combined together, that is what you've been attacking this morning on inflation. I'm not so much about the color of the money or the money itself. While the money itself is an indication and a major indication of the compounded failed policies of the PPP administration, right? Over the past 23 years, that's what's catching up to them now, right? So they have to print larger bills to compensate for the inflation. The fact that you could put that in layman's terms for the people to see that the PPP's administration fiscal budget has been a failure, is a failure, and has been a failure. I mean, they are printing money like Russia and China are printing money. Russia was one of the first places. Like you said, Venezuela, people are going with bags of money just to buy bread. Right? So, excuse me. People are going with bags of money just to buy bread. So, when people could see the relationship, that things that we used to go to the store to buy with just $100 and fill the whole bag, $100 could barely buy 3 sugar cakes today. Sugar cake. People could make that correlation. When the $100 bill first came out in the 80s, we could have bought a whole bag of stuff with $100. So we have not improved in terms of our fiscal economy, right? And so I was listening to this morning to see how Guyana has gradually, every 5 years, been printing larger and larger sets of monies, which is not a testimony to the successful financial planning of the PPP administration, who've been in there for the last 23 going on 25 years. So they have to bear the responsibility for the brunt of it. Now, they may say that the APNU, but the APNU has showed that they were trying to close the estate down just to bail out just to keep the boat afloat, according to the former finance minister. The whole estate situation with the budget, selling out the estate and closing it down, and all the doctor that Mr. Vincent, that Mr. Jordan explained, those were just measures to keep Guyana afloat. Financial measures, financial gymnastics they had to do. Borrow and pay off and all this kind of stuff. It might have placed Guyana in some sort of a debt. I don't know how much. But I guess that had to be done, or continue with the hemorrhaging of the estate, based upon the explanation I was given. Sugar wasn't feasible in a sustainable way, where it could make a profit. So people need to be able to see, just like what you were saying this morning. I think it strikes a major blow. When I heard it, I said, wow, that's about the strongest argument I've heard for a long time against the PPP. Because they are very concerned about their image. And at a time now when cost of living is sky high and everything is going through the roof, they don't want to be seen as the causative factor behind all of this, which they are. And we have to make them own it. Now, what you were doing this morning is making them own it. Right? In very basic layman terms, where the people in the street could understand, $2,000 bill is not for cosmetics. It's not for look good. You understand me? $2,000 bill is just another big plaster, another big band-aid for patch up a abscess, a life sore. You understand?
Thank you for that voice note. We have the lines remain home. 6225933 is the number to call. So call and let's talk the thing. Wow. I was sharing up voice notes here. None is over a minute though. Let's see how they're going.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Kadaki. I sent a message a couple of weeks ago concerning a young man who get chopped up in Pleasance from a video. Now, he was in the hospital, he get released, they had to go to court. Now, the mother couldn't afford a lawyer, right? And what happened is that they went to court today with the person who injured him. With the person that injured him, the magistrate put all two of them on remand at Lusignan. Now this boy going to, the magistrate actually see this boy with his wounds and send him in to Lusignan. Now the other day again now, the young man ended up coming out because like his family have a little money, they say in Bristol. The magistrate, the other day now, the magistrate call up the matter. Then the matter call up now. They put all the charges on this young man, not the other person. Now, they put him on $250,000 bail. Now the guy that shoot him in the village, the Miller guy that shoot him in the village, they put all the charges on this young man. Now, what exactly is going on with the court? Because I cannot understand this whole situation. The mother don't have any money to do.
And since we're discussing,
My whole take with this thing, the court is not trying this matter fairly. The charging, I think the mother says like she not only understand the charges with the gun and all, and he didn't. It's not he shoot anybody. The boy shoot him. He didn't chop the boy chop him. So I can't understand all of. And the guy who call the CID guy was write up the documents and all of these stuff. His name is Newman. I feel is he know what is really going on because he had to write up the.
All right, those are public issues, but they are outside of this morning's discussion. I'll have to listen to those voice notes again and see where they're leading. Voice note.
Good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. I am wondering if Mr. Jordan, if he's well enough, to give an analysis on the 2022 budget. I sure would like to hear his take on the budget. Thank you.
Okay, let me repeat for the benefit of viewers that Mr. Jordan is still, convalescing. He's still in recovery and he's not likely to be on any program anytime soon, but he is committed that as soon as he finds enough strength and he's well enough that he's going to come back, and he will be coming back with a bang. In the meantime, I am asking you all, please stop pressuring Mr. Jordan to get out of his sick bed to come on the program. There are other people who, I know that he does a good job at analyzing budget and financial issues and so on. But there are others who are doing it. For example, I've seen, is the young man's name Lowe, Dr. Hinds, who has been on your program a number of times?
Yes, Elson Lowe.
Right, and then tomorrow evening you're going to have Professor Clive Thomas. So there are people out there who will be doing the same thing that we're asking Mr. Jordan to do. Good? And I am sure, I mean, they say every man kisses his wife differently, but we will all benefit from whatever analyses those other individuals do bring. In the meantime, let us give Mr. Jordan an opportunity to recuperate and not feel pressured. Voice note.
Good morning, Dr. Hinds. Good morning, Kadaki. Once again, a very informative, very, very informative program. I'm here listening. I'm convinced that the PPP don't want this country to get better. I'm convinced. I grew up under the PPP, and to me, they always, they believe in this system of, keep it trickling. Once it keep trickling, then, nobody rise above in a certain way, only people who they want to raise in that way. And it's a bad system. I mean, people could criticize the Grange government how much, but every year within those 3-4 years, we've seen a little bit. I'm no big numbers guy, but I mean, the small person on the street will tell you that indeed. So, once again, it's a disastrous budget. It's not good, but it's our country, and we have to continue to, talk and make moves to make it better. You understand me? Because with oil in the country, most people think that your life would improve, but our lives are not improved. Our lives are not improving at all. I'm just saddened by the fact of, how our country is going. But as I said, I'll continue to listen, and you guys continue to pound the point home, and trust me, it's teaching us, because what I know in the last year from these programs, I didn't know 15, 20 years ago.
Thank you for that voice note. The lines are strangely dead this morning, man. They're hardly going. Voice note, we have a lot of voice notes though.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, Mr. David Hinds. Good morning to all the viewers. On tackling poverty. You see, since the African people came out from slavery, there was a system that put in place that to keep the black race into poverty. Because once you keep the black race into poverty, they're gonna always be on top. If you look at it right across the diaspora, the black race is the race who always in poverty since came out from slavery. The black race is the only race who are trying to strive to reach the top, but they will never reach the top. Only if they unite. And if you look, all other race, we have Indians, we have the Chinese, we have the Portuguese, we have the white. Now, all these other race playing a part with the elite system that was created by our slave masters to help keep the black man down. So, no government, no white race, no Indian race, no Chinese race will want to tackle poverty in any country where you see the black man live. Because if they tackle poverty, the black man, we're not going to be eating crumbs at the table anymore. We're going to become like them. And then remember, who is the first one that make planes? Who's the first one to drive a plane? You know, remember, it's the black people that teach all other race how to live and how to survive. So, by keeping the black man down, it created space for them to be on the top. You see what I'm saying? So, no country will never tackle poverty, especially where the black people live in those countries. They will never ever tackle poverty. Because, once again, when the black man is in poverty, it's easier for any other race to remain on top and to rule. So they keep on to divide and rule us.
Call it live. Good
Thank
morning.
you, God.
Good morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Listen to you guys all the time. Great program and great information as usual. My take on this budget is disgusting, it's despicable, it's disrespectful to the working class, the public servants, most of them who happens to be Afro-Guyanese and largely supporters of the coalition, PNC, APNU, AFC. My problem with the budget goes deeper than just the numbers. It goes back to the unions, the workers themselves. I mean, I'm a teamster. And if a company produces a contract that we don't like or we have a problem with, our union calls industrial action. It's just disgusting that black people, public servants, is sitting down and allowing the PPP to get away with murder. This is what bread and butter. Forget race for a second. This is about paying your bills. This is about raising a family. This is about improving your life, your livelihood, buying a car, buying a house, being able to take vacations, put enough money, a proper retirement. It's disgusting what's going on in Guyana. But we cannot continue blaming the PPP when you have union leaders like Lewis, Yard, all these guys who've been there for donkey years, and all they do is run their mouth. That's all they do. I don't even think they have any pull to get the workers on to put their workers on the street. The other one, Coretta McDonald, all she do is run her mouth. You need people who could move people. Because when my union called a strike or called industrial action, every man, boy, and child get up and we go out. This is about money. This is about your better benefits. Gaisuko get what? $6 billion. Couple weeks ago, they got $250,000 a man. I mean, seriously, and you giving these people 7%, and these people going to work same way? How could that advantage stop in Guyana? Only thing could happen in Guyana is Guyana to divide, and they go their way and we go our way. This union cannot work. You cannot be treating one set of people one way and the other set of people the other way, and people shouldn't react. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. The union and the public servants need to stand up. Get rid of Yard, get rid of Lincoln Lewis, get rid of McDonald, get rid of all of them, and put the rank and file members, the man who's standing right next to you every day. All this talking is nothing. It's waste of time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, caller. Voice note.
Morning, Kadaki. My call this morning is not about the budget. My call is about, I used to be telling, and the morning, Dr. Hines, I forgot about you. Sorry about that. I used to be telling friends about if PPP gets back in there, we're going to have black people who claim to be fighters, going to be beaten into submission. I said all of those who've been running lives and what's not on the television, on Facebook during the election fiasco, they're going to disappear as soon as PPP gets in there, because people are going to be beaten into submission. And I hate when people use the things struggle, fight, and quote people like Martin Luther King or what's not, but they forgot that these people been there, done that, locked up, come out back, fight, get kicked up, locked up, come out back, fight, and look at Mr. Cummings. He got beat up almost to death. So many people have lost their lives. So our people, by the time we get locked up once, it's over. Right? It's over. And we still continue to talk about fight and struggle. Where are the Kadakis of Guyana? Where the Dr. Hines of Guyana? They're quick to quit. And that is what is going on. They're quick to quit. I'm sorry, but that's the fact.
Call it live. Good morning.
Morning, Kadaki. Morning, Dr. Hines.
Morning.
Sometimes this government is ridiculous. You have one of the largest regions, right? And you're going to cut a budget. I'm giving region 1, region 2, and region 3 increased budget allocation. It's ridiculous sometimes. It's ridiculous, Kadaki. People got to stand up and do what they have to do. Don't worry with union and union. We, the people, have to get out there and do what we have to do. And when we do it, the union leaders, they're going to follow. They have to, in my days, we don't wait on union to strike. We just do what we have to do. And when we do what we have to do, they have to fall in line with us. So if they're going to sit down and wait on union, nothing is going to happen. We got to lead and they have to follow. That's the way we got to do it now. So what union leaders, they are there, they do what they have to do, we have to do what we have to do. Don't worry them and just do what we have to do. It's ridiculous for this government to be using it. Have a good day.
Thank you, caller. Dr. Hines, anything to respond to?
No.
Voice note, continue.
Good morning, Mr. Kadaki. What people have to understand, Guyana is an oil-producing country, yes, but if you're not benefiting from the oil, it will not be a good thing. You will not benefit from the oil if the current government is stealing the money and using it for themselves. I mean, Guyana is it's an oil-rich country, as we claim, but you're not seeing the profit going to the ordinary man from the oil. They have Exxon Mobil drilling the oil, and we all know Exxon Mobil will be getting their share of the deal, or should I say the bulk of the deal. So Guyana is a new oil producing country in South America and in the Caribbean, but the oil revenue is not benefiting the average man. It's benefiting the private people and the government of the day who's mishandling the money. So yeah, we could say or get excited and say, yeah, Guyana is a big oil producing country. But if the ordinary man on the street is not benefiting from the oil, then it makes no sense, because you can have oil and be a poor country once the people or the lower class people are not benefiting. And you could make examples like countries like Venezuela, Nigeria, and those other countries in Africa and those other countries elsewhere. So you could say Guyana is a new oil producing country, but if the oil is not benefiting the average man like it's supposed to, or the oil revenue is not benefiting the average man and it's only benefiting the wealthy people, then it is back to square one. You might as well say Guyana is a poor oil producing country. That is my take this morning. And good morning to you, Dr. Hines. How can I forget you? My apologies. Good morning to you.
Voice note.
Kadaki, the caller should understand, as long as Patrick Yard stays head of the union, and nothing would be done with the public service. Kadaki, good morning. The whole public service should resign from the union. See if Patrick Yard won't get up off his backside and start to do something.
Call it live, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Mr. Kadaki. Good morning, Mr. What name? There with your camera's name?
Dr. Hines.
Dr. Hines. Good morning, everybody, and all the viewers. I sent something for you on the WhatsApp there, Mr. Kadaki, with a man from Guinea. The country of oil, right? And he alone, all the account, all the money, everything going in his account. All right, he's from Guinea. I sent you a little documentary. I don't know if you play it or you see it. All right? And that is what they're doing. That is what they're doing. They're taking the whole of the money, using up and do it for themselves. Right? So, I don't see why Guyana get as kind to what some people were saying, you know? I don't know if the people might vex what I'm saying, but I wish Guyana didn't have no oil. I don't know if you all go think me, because this oil thing creating a whole heap of problem, because that was what they try for going powerful, for steal up the whole of the money and do what they got to and enrich themselves. But the time coming, I always say that, the time is coming. You see? The time is coming. And when the time comes, hope they don't say black people this and black people do them this and do them. It's them creating the whole problem for themselves. You understand what I'm saying? That's my take, Mr. Kadaki.
Thank you, caller. It's now 11 minutes to the 9 o'clock hour. You don't have any other voice notes that I can readily see. And so, Dr. Hines, is there anything you want to respond to, any comment you wish to make?
No, just to say to people that continue to pay attention to this budget. We will continue to bring the analysis and the explanation, but continue to pay, because the budget says it all.
Did I see a large part of the quote-unquote withdrawal from the IRF going to debt servicing?
No.
Okay, good. At 10 minutes to 9 o'clock, let me play that little documentary that we were just told about. I hope it plays, because it's whining. Caller live, good morning. Caller live, good morning.
morning, Kadaki. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Dr. Hines and Kadaki, I don't understand. Is it a conspiracy for nobody to respond and nobody to say anything? I understand that they have full control of how they spend the money. But to listen to everybody, I listened last night to what Dr. Hines was saying, and I listened to other people when they were talking about the budget. But I cannot understand blatantly these people putting out such a budget again. People should be out in the streets protesting because it's actually people are suffering, they're punishing. People don't have food to money to buy stuff because you cannot actually afford it. All these fires that they having in the place, people need to come out and protest. But I guess again, people are afraid. And because people are afraid, this is the reason why they have the full control of doing what they want to do. It is shock and appalling to know that people are doing these things to each other. Why? This is a country you have been. How could you say later on in life, oh, this some of the things that are going on into history, and your children have to come up to air. This is what Indian people did to black people, or did to the six races, because it's not they're doing it specifically to yes, it most target black people, but a lot of Indian people are feeling blood too. So I don't understand it. How could you do that to your people? When you do that, what do you think America is thinking about you? Are they thinking, America thinking, oh, they are good? Huh? They are not good? Because wait, America waiting for you. You wait and see. It's just a time. And Dr. Hines, on Wednesday, I think you have a full schedule and you're busy. But there's a guy came on Benchcraft show and he was giving all the information. I think Wednesday he's going to talk about Miss Sarah Ann Lynch. He's going to get in to she information to find out exactly what side she on and all about her money and all kind of things he's going to get talking about. So, Kadaki, you guys are doing a good show. At least you helping people out to understand what is actually going on. But they always say, one day, bucket will go well. The butter must come out. And it's going to come. Time. God is in charge, but we always say, God, it take too long to do things. But it's coming. God is in charge.
Thank you, Carla.
Hey, guys.
Yes, at 8 hours 54, it's time to wrap up the show. Let me thank you for being here this morning. Let me also encourage you to continue to watch and see what's happening in your society. The reality is, yes, it's an oil-producing state. Lots and lots of money is there to be made from oil production. There are more oil finds in the country. Kaichur is reporting more oil finds. Calling you live, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Kadaki and Dr. Hines. I will piggyback from one of the previous caller who said people need to fight. I don't think we have any fighters anymore. Maybe people in submission by the PPP and have succumbed, or they are comfortable in their demise. But what I know is that if we continue on the trajectory we are heading, I see no hope for Guyana, especially black folks. People are too comfortable. They complain a lot and it ends there. I don't know what else to say. Thank you.
Thank you, caller. Yes, more oil is being found. Exxon is going deeper, and so they are expected to produce more oil and so on. But at the end of the day, like most of the callers are saying, unless we have proper management of those resources, the ordinary rank and file citizen will not benefit. And I want to say by extension, unless the ordinary rank and file citizen stand up and send a very strong message to whoever is in government, be it PPP, PNCA, PNU, regardless of who is in government, they're not going to get their fair share of the pie. And so the onus is on all of us citizens to stand up and demand from those who are sitting in the seat of political power what rightfully belongs to us. Call your life, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Amsterdam. Good morning, Dr. Hines. Good morning to listening to the S4. What is striking me today is that clerks, I want to make some comparison. Australia's country earn as much as between $900 to $1,000 per month. Clerks in Guyana working for $70,000 per month. And the government have not addressed that adequately. All these tax concessions given to these big companies will never trickle down to the economy, to the poor people in this country. And this government is reckless. I keep saying that they do not have no sense of governance. It's all about staying in power and live on the purse of the taxpayers' money. And who's going to benefit from this concession? Not the ordinary person. They're not putting no structure in place to protect the poor and the vulnerable. And they continue doing this, and Guyanese need to rise up and stand up for what you believe in. And we have to keep on this program trying to do our best to educate and inform our people, because we keep leaving behind. All these foreigners going to come, and Guyanese would have nothing in 50 years' time. Afro-Guyanese going to be worse off. The government doesn't have no system in place to help the people because they do not have no way how they learn it from. This is where you get the education from now, Ms. Kadaki, believe it or not. All PPP supporters and the members and senior rank listen to this program every day. This is where they get ideas from, because they do not have ideas. They're uninformed, they're not technical minded. Government's job is to make the environment conducive for the growth of the people. Government job also has to make sure they make at least 75% of people comfortable in this country. Guyanese people traveling from Georgetown to Profit Harmony, working for $70,000 a month. How the hell they paying the passage? That's why in our public sector, people are hustling and thieving. Because they're not doing better for the people. And baby Satan doesn't know what he's doing. He was thrown into the arena and he learned on the job, but he hasn't learned the right way. The dumb boy, though, he worse of all. He's worse. And I keep saying there are 4 elements in the PPP party. As long as they're together, they would never go forward. Sharma, Attorney, the Auditor General, Baby Satan, Gail Teixeira, and the Speaker. The Speaker is a snake from the time I knew him as a young man coming up. He always come up cunning, don't say much, particularly when black people are wrong. And if any black man in Guyana who support PPP tell me to have a relationship with Nasser Nadir, I know him since my young man. He always come and sit quietly. The man is no good. Thank you very much and have a good day, sir. That's my contribution.
Thank you for calling. It's now 9 o'clock and that's a wrap. That's a wrap. $10,000 coin, $100 coin. It's not for fashion, it's not jewelry. It is because your money is being devalued, inflation is kicking heck. But you're producing oil. Have a great day, y'all. Be vigilant. See you tomorrow. See you this evening on Dr. Hines Politics 101. And definitely I'll see you tomorrow for another program of BUXTONIAN Morning Time. Be safe, stay safe, and continue to share the program, continue to share the links, continue to encourage others to tune in, because this is your source of information. This is where you get your guidance from. This is really Cam's family, knock heads together.